Welcome to Hotel Leaders, hosted by Peter Demore. With over 25 years in the hotel industry, as a manager, educator, entrepreneur, and now an independent voice, he brings a balanced and insightful perspective on the world's greatest hotels. It's time to check in.
There are hotels that are luxurious, and then there are hotels that become the definition. At the Ritz Paris, luxury isn't decoration, it's a discipline, and its name became a word, Ritzy. The Ritz Paris is one of those rare places where the name isn't just a name, it's shorthand for a whole philosophy, elegance that feels effortless, glamour without noise, and comfort so well engineered you stop noticing the work behind it. And it starts with the address, 15 Place Vendôme, the square that feels like Paris, dressed in its most formal clothes, where everything looks composed, expensive, and perfectly in place. The Ritz became the template for modern luxury, whilst being a legendary, historic property. The Ritz sits on Place Vendôme in the first arrondissement, the Paris of sophistication, quiet power, and institutions that don't need to advertise their importance. And the location isn't just prestigious, it's operationally useful. You're minutes from the Louvre, the Opera, but Vendôme itself is more controlled than the big tourist arteries. The square is wide, symmetrical, and predictable, which means arrivals can be handled with a kind of calm choreography. Cars pull in cleanly, guests step out without a crowd pressing in, and the hotel can protect discretion without turning the entrance into a security theatre. It's also a location built for the guest the Ritz really serves. Not someone doing Paris, but someone living Paris for a few days, where you can slip out to a gallery, a fitting, a jewellery appointment, or a dinner, and return to a place that feels sealed from noise. That's what Place Vendôme gives the Ritz, Paris on the doorstep and control at the threshold. Now that we know where it sits, let's go back to the man who turned a name into a global shorthand for luxury. The Ritz Paris opened in 1898, created by visionary hotelier César Ritz, in collaboration with chef Auguste Escoffier, a pairing that fused two power systems under one roof, hospitality and cuisine. And César Ritz's story matters because it explains why the Ritz isn't just glamorous, it's engineered. Here's the founder arc in the clearest form. Humble beginnings. Born in Niederwald, Switzerland, one of 13 children in a poor farming family. Early struggles, apprenticed in hotels, but was dismissed by one manager who said he lacked the knack for the business. A serious early blow. Rise to fame, he travelled Europe, learned the trade, and ultimately managed prestigious hotels, including the Grand Hotel National in Lucerne, where he revolutionised service through comfort, precision, and guest psychology. Partnership with Escoffier, his legendary collaboration with Auguste Escoffier, created temples of luxury, first at London's Savoy Hotel and then at the Paris Ritz, where cuisine and hospitality became one integrated promise. Legacy. Ritz became synonymous with elegance, giving rise to the term Ritzy and establishing hotels that still define luxury today. And between that founding moment and today, a few historical bridge points matter because they explain how a legend survives. Early 1900s. The Ritz becomes embedded in society Paris, the place where influence meets discretion. World War II era. The Ritz remains a symbol, and later a stage for post-war myth-making and cultural memory. Late 20th century, ownership changes and reinvestment modernise the machine without removing the spell. Modern turning point. the closure in 2012 and the reopening in 2016. A renovation designed to modernise infrastructure while preserving the identity. The renovation also reduced the key count to 142, a strategic move. Fewer keys, larger rooms, lower density, and a calmer operational rhythm. That's the survival test for a legend hotel. Can it modernise without becoming generic? The Ritz bet on continuity, new systems, same spell. Next, let's talk about who runs that spell today, because in a hotel like this, leadership is the invisible architecture. A hotel like the Ritz runs on invisible leadership because the guest experience here isn't built around novelty, it's built around consistency. The challenge is delivering a level of polish that feels timeless, not managed. In late 2025, the hotel announced a new general manager, Arnaud de Saint-Exupéry, effective October 1st, 2025, succeeding Laurent Hirschbach. And what's fascinating about Arnaud's background is that he didn't begin as a traditional hotel lifer. He started in marketing, including roles in the automotive and travel sectors, before being recruited into hospitality, where he became deeply shaped by mentorship and a deliberate credibility-building training path. He joined Hyatt around the time of the Park Hyatt Paris Vendôme launch, which matters, because launching a contemporary palace in Paris is basically a graduate degree in luxury positioning. He then moved into operations, where he trained across hotel functions to earn internal credibility. And that's a very specific kind of leader, someone who understands brand and also respects the craft of execution. From there, his resume reads like a playbook for modern luxury leadership. A general manager role at Andaz Liverpool Street in London, intensity, pace and lifestyle energy, leadership through the opening of Andaz Tokyo, where cultural nuance and execution discipline are non-negotiable. Then senior responsibility at Hyatt Regency London, the Churchill, alongside an expanded role overseeing Hyatt's portfolio across the UK and Ireland. So what does the Ritz get in a GM like that? A leader who can move between brand strategy and operational precision, the exact combination required to run a landmark hotel without turning it into a museum or a machine. And while guests might not follow leadership appointments closely, they feel the outcomes, how quiet the hotel is, how smooth arrivals run, how discreet the culture stays, how well a property protects privacy without feeling cold. This is orchestral leadership. Housekeeping, rooms, engineering, culinary, concierge, security, all synchronized so the guest only experiences calm. Now let's step through the doors, because the Ritz sells its promise in the first 3 minutes. Arrival at the Ritz is less check-in and more initiation. You step in from the geometry of Place Vendôme and the hotel changes the temperature of your day. Softer sound, softer light, slower pace. It's not accidental. It's the first act of service. We've got you now. The first 3 minutes tend to unfold like this: a calm greeting at the door and your name used early, not loudly, just confidently. Luggage disappears without a handoff moment, so you never feel processed. You're guided inward at walking pace, not rushed to a counter. And the first wow isn't a chandelier, it's composure, the sense that nothing here is improvising. In a hotel like the Ritz, the lobby's job isn't to impress you, it's to stabilize you, to turn Paris outside into quiet inside. This is what the Ritz sells in the first 5 minutes, not glamour, control. With the pace set, let's go upstairs, because the room product is where strategy becomes tangible. The modern Ritz Paris has 142 rooms and suites, and the hotel describes each room as its own atmosphere, some looking onto Place Vendôme, others onto the Grand Jardin. This isn't a volume business. It's an apartment hotel business. Space, privacy, long stays, and guests who want to feel like residents. Here's the plain English product ladder. As price goes up, you're buying. More square meters, more separation, living room versus sleeping room, more view, Vendôme versus garden, and more protection, quiet privacy control. Post-renovation, the Ritz leaned into narrative suites, names associated with cultural icons, because at this level story is part of the product. You already have the Coco Chanel story as a signature association, taste, restraint, Paris distilled. And add one more that matters here, the Hemingway suite, a suite that nods to the hotel's literary mythology and reinforces the Ritz pattern. Narrative doesn't sit in a museum display case. It's built into the product. At the top end, the Ritz trades in private apartment energy, suites that feel like quiet residences, not hotel rooms, the kind of places where the real luxury is how protected you feel. Now let's follow the guest back downstairs, because at the Ritz, food and drink aren't amenities, they're operating tools. At the Ritz, food and drink aren't amenities. They're institutions designed to do two jobs at once. 1. Create memories. 2. Keep guests inside the Ritz world. The famous ritual space is Bar Hemingway, tiny, intimate, and deliberately capped at 25 seats, which turns a cocktail into a pilgrimage. That seat count is strategy. Scarcity creates desirability, but it also creates control. Less noise, better service, more privacy. The Ritz also treats afternoon tea as a formal ritual, not just tea, but a setting designed for slow living and long conversations. This is F&B as theatre, but intimate theatre. At the Ritz, a drink becomes a conversation, and a conversation becomes an evening. Next, we zoom out to the rest of the hotel, because facilities only matter if they reinforce the promise. The facilities at the Ritz exist to protect the core promise: privacy, wellness, continuity. After the 2016 reopening, the hotel emphasised major upgrades across infrastructure and guest amenities, part of the broader modernisation that kept the Ritz competitive at the very top end of Paris luxury. The Ritz also became known for the club feel of its wellness spaces, not a loud gym environment, but a private, controlled sanctuary designed for guests who want restoration without exposure. The point isn't that the Ritz has facilities, many hotels do. The point is that the facilities here are designed to feel like a private member's world, discreet, composed, and never crowded in spirit. Now let's talk about the people, because a legend hotel is only as good as the culture that protects it. If you work at the Ritz Paris, you're not simply delivering service, you're protecting a legend. The people who thrive here are detail-driven and emotionally intelligent, but also discreet by default. You need discipline to execute flawlessly and warmth to make it feel effortless. Training has to be layered. First, technical mastery. Not just how to do the job, but how to do it without leaving fingerprints. Timing service, so corridors feel empty, not busy. Room readiness that's perfect without the guest sensing the reset. Maintenance that's invisible, because in a legend hotel, nothing should ever look fixed. Then, storytelling, because guests ask questions in a place like this, and staff need to answer in a way that feels informed but never performative. And finally, mentorship, where micro moments are repeated until they become instinct. How to enter a suite when a guest is resting. How to anticipate a preference without announcing that you remembered it. How to protect privacy without making the guest feel managed. Because here, luxury isn't volume, it's precision, delivered with calm, and the service signature isn't one line, it's an atmosphere. Guided without being managed, remembered without being watched, protected without feeling hidden. And when that culture works, something else happens. The Ritz becomes the default choice for lives lived in public. The Ritz Paris isn't famous because celebrities stayed there. Celebrities stayed there because the Ritz offered something rarer than glamour. Certainty, discretion, predictability, and a culture that knows how to hold a public life without making it a spectacle. The Ritz's legend includes cultural figures who didn't just visit, they became part of the hotel's mythology. Coco Chanel, Ernest Hemingway, Marcel Proust, Maria Callas, and often cited icons of the broader Ritz orbit like Charlie Chaplin and F. Scott Fitzgerald. And the Ritz isn't only famous in history, it's famous on screen because filmmakers reach for this hotel when they need instant shorthand for Parisian luxury. Funny Face with Audrey Hepburn. Love in the Afternoon with Audrey Hepburn and Gary Cooper. How to Steal $1 Million with Audrey Hepburn and Peter O'Toole. The Da Vinci Code with Tom Hanks. And the World War II era miniseries, The Man Who Lived at the Ritz, with Perry King, Leslie Caron as Coco Chanel, and David McCallum. There's also a more somber cultural moment tied to the Ritz. The final evening of Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed included time at the hotel. The point isn't name-dropping. It's what all of this signals. For more than a century, the Ritz has been trusted as a safe container for public lives. Now let's talk about recognition, because awards matter only when they confirm what the operation delivers. Awards matter in luxury hotels because they're not just trophies. They're a signal that the experience is repeatable, year after year across changing teams and seasons. For the Ritz, one of the clearest proof points is culinary. Espadon's Michelin star. There's also a fascinating twist about recognition in France. The country has an official government-backed designation above 5-star called Distinction Palace, administered through a formal process. And here's the nuance. People use the word palace casually for legendary hotels, but Distinction Palace is an official label awarded through a formal evaluation process. That nuance is actually on brand for the Ritz. Its reputation was never built on labels. It was built on something harder. Legend sustained by delivery. And that brings us to the verdict, the one line that captures what the Ritz really sells. A big thank you to the Ritz for the background video courtesy of their YouTube channel. I would also like to thank Walk With Me Tim, who provided an excellent walkthrough video of a recent stay. Please see the link in the description for the full video. Definitely worth a watch or two. The Ritz Paris is iconic because it helped define modern luxury. Not as opulence, but as elegance made operational. It isn't a hotel that wins by being louder or newer. It wins by being more controlled. Fewer keys, calmer spaces, and a culture trained to make perfection feel unforced. Here's the hotel leader's verdict. The Ritz doesn't sell rooms. It sells certainty, the feeling that everything will be handled quietly and beautifully. And the leadership lesson is simple. Luxury isn't what the guest sees. Luxury is what the guest never has to think about.
Thank you for joining today's episode. If you enjoyed it, the best way to show your appreciation is to follow the podcast so that you never miss our monthly episodes. Farewell, until the next time that you check in to Hotel Leaders.